podcast, where our mission is to offer thoughtful and inspiring parenting and educational programming. We are committed to producing impactful podcasts that add value to conversations around education, student advocacy, and parental challenges. My name is Heather Moore, and I'm the head of school at Strelitz International Academy in Virginia Beach, and I will be your host. I have over 28 years of experience in independent schools, with 8 years as a head of school and 20 years serving as an independent school chief financial officer. I also have raised 2 children, one finishing medical school and one starting law school, and have been married to my wonderful husband for over 31 years. On today's episode, we will discuss nutrition guidelines, picky eaters, food allergies, and mythbusters about what is healthier. Joining us today is Sandra Porter-Leon. Welcome, Sandra. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Heather. It's great being here.
It's going to be so exciting. We're going to all learn so much. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I have been in the field of nutrition for probably the last 30 years, and I started out in pediatric nutrition, where I was the director of wellness for the Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters, and then sort of pivoted to more of a teaching career and taught for about 20 years at Tidewater Community College and also part-time at Old Dominion. So it's been a really fun run. And now I am enjoying a different career, still in nutrition, but the director of nutrition for a small company called the Neighborhood Harvest. And we are our farm-to-table company where we partner with about 30 farmers and then deliver fruits and vegetables and meals to your front door. So it's been very exciting.
That's amazing. So that's local fruits and vegetables, right? With our local farmers?
That's right. That's right.
That's so cool. I love that. We'll have to talk more about that. Okay, so let's just dive right into things that we think parents and families would really like information about. I think we should start with the current nutrition guidelines and recommended daily allowances and food pyramids and dividing the plate and all those great things.
Sure. In a nutshell, the dietary guidelines are simply recommendations, right? And they're updated every 5 years based on new research. And they provide advice on really what to eat, what to drink, not only to promote health, but also to, prevent chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease and osteoporosis. So I think the interesting thing about the new guidelines, which is the 20 to 25, that the guidelines now include all stages of life. It used to be 2 years and older. Okay. Now they include pregnancy and breastfeeding and a lot of other great tidbits that weren't in there before.
Okay, that's interesting. So specifically, what do they say relating to children, I guess? Maybe school-age children or maybe 2 to 10?
Sure. I think one of the biggest changes is the recommendation to introduce peanut-containing foods at 6 months of age. And in the past, it was always recommended that we wait a year or to 2 years to give a child, or an infant peanut-containing foods. And I'm not talking about peanuts, but, diluted peanut butter or peanut powder. And it really has shown that, especially for kids who are at high risk for an allergy. Okay. But the studies have shown that by giving or introducing these foods early can prevent these allergies later in life or even during childhood.
Okay, so that's interesting. So introducing it earlier can prevent the allergy is what they're saying now.
Exactly.
I actually remember a time when my kids were little. I think it was actually my second child, but my first child, it was go ahead and give them cow's milk at 6 months old or something like that. That changed and they stopped. They said, oh my gosh, no, don't do that until I think it was past a year or maybe it was 18 months when my second one came along. But there was also a big discussion back then about feeding them cereal, that you shouldn't feed them cereal because they could develop a wheat allergy, I believe. So I don't know. It's interesting. So my first child got cereal and cow's milk at 6 months old. And then when we went for his next checkup, we saw a different pediatrician and he was like, you did what? Nobody here would tell you to do that. And I was like, well, this is who we saw and this is what they told us to do. And he was like, oh, yeah, okay.
And I'm sure they're doing fine just now.
They're
right now.
perfectly
Yeah,
fine. They're
that's it.
perfectly fine. But that is interesting because we have so many kids today that have peanut allergies or egg allergies or just tree nut allergies in general. So I think it's interesting that by giving it to them earlier, it can help prevent it, I think, in the long term. So
Absolutely.
oh, here's a hot topic for parents, I think. School lunches. And also weeknight dinners that are easy and manageable, yet still healthy for our children and our families, and of course still tasty.
Yeah, that it's a challenge. I think the biggest obstacle to healthy eating is enough time. And I think one of the greatest or the biggest complaints that I get from parents is, what can I do really quickly in less than 15 minutes? And I think everyone is trying to balance home life and kids and activities. And I see it with my own daughter, who just had our first granddaughter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's such a blessing. But how do you get a healthy meal on the table? Greatest advice that I got when I was a young mother is meal prep. I think life becomes so much easier when you can just plan ahead.
Yeah.
And I provided some resources for the website.
Okay, good.
That parents can look at as far as recipe and tidbits and things that they can, do very quickly. What I call heat and eat. One idea is also to choose recipes like chili or lasagna that you can double batch.
Yeah.
And then use it during the week, and then also freeze it and pull it out when you need it. I also love the one appliance, the slow cooker. Mm-hmm. And I know the Instapot is so crazy right now, but I love being able to put all the ingredients in the morning and then come home and you have a hot meal.
I do too. I love that.
And I think that parents, just if they could plan a little ahead, and if they can't plan ahead, there's some little shortcuts you can take as well. I love breakfast for dinner. You can make an omelet or some, as far as or frittata, and sneak in some extra vegetables that way as well.
Yeah.
And make it very quickly. Other ideas, the rotisserie chicken. You can get it at the beginning of the week and make anything from the tacos to stir fry. One of my favorite recipes is adding a little barbecue sauce on a whole wheat bun with a little salad on the side, and that takes no time at all.
Yeah, that's a quick, easy dinner. I know that I started meal prepping, gosh, I don't know, it's probably been when my kids were maybe more in middle school, but because life got so busy at that time, maybe it was the end of elementary, beginning of middle, there's so many sports, so many things that you're running off to, and I just found like if I spent some time on the weekend thinking about what I was going to cook the next week, buying the ingredients, and then if at all possible, I actually do this more now than I did then, but making big batch things, like you said, something that's double batch that you can have for dinner on Sunday evening as a family, and then you can take the leftovers and put them in containers for lunch.
Exactly.
So it makes your lunch life at work or school or wherever you're going so much easier. And just saves a lot of time. And I also agree with you. I love crock pot meals. I have both a crock pot and an Instapot. And it's funny, the Instapot also does slow cooker, but I've never tried that with it for some reason. It never occurred to me. Every time I want to do a slow cooker, I pull out that crock pot. So anyway, those are such a time saver. And it's just nice to come home and that your house smells wonderful and dinner is finished and all you have to do is serve it.
It's a pleasure.
It really is. I totally agree. Oh, this is also a favorite topic. How about picky eaters, and how do you try to make everyone happy?
That's a tough topic. And I remember 25 years ago when I was working at Children's Hospital, it's probably the number one question.
Yeah.
First of all, it's perfectly normal. And I think kids often, or parents forget that it's really part of the normative development especially of a 2-year-old who's really starting to assert their independence. And I think that one of my favorite authors who will also put on the website is Ellen Satter, and she has something called the EllenSatterInstitute.org, and she just provides great ideas for parents. And one thing that she says is that parents are responsible for providing healthy meals. You go to the grocery store, you prepare the food, but ultimately the child is responsible whether they're going to eat it or not. So I think parents just need to be aware that if your child is growing normally and really gaining weight, don't sweat it. You can certainly talk to your pediatrician about it, but it's a matter of just children can feel your stress in dealing with it.
That's true. That's true. So I'll tell you one trick I used when my kids were little. I did consciously think about what I was making, and if I knew that I was asking them to try something they'd never eaten, I always made sure there was one thing on the plate that I knew they liked. And I used to say to them when they would go, "Ew, what's that?" Because usually it was something vegetable that they hadn't tried. I would just tell them, if you just taste it, if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it all, but you need to at least taste it and tell me what you think about it. And that tended to work. And the other reason I really did that too is because then I would know that one thing that was on the plate that they did like, they're going to eat all of it. So at least they're getting that is kind of how I looked at it. But I don't know.
And there's a great article in Parents Magazine, I think a couple of weeks ago. We'll post that one as well.
Okay, good.
Which says exactly that.
Okay.
And in addition, just put a small amount of whatever it is. And parents should remember that it may take 10, 11, 15 times for your child to even try it. And if you have to, add cheese to it or add a dip to it, those are little tricks that you can use. And the other thing that I think is really important is not making the child feel guilty. You really make me feel bad when you don't eat that, or grandma made that. Really allowing the child to dictate and trying over and over again in a very calm way, so that certainly will empower the child to feel good once they do try it and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I hadn't even thought about that. But 9 times out of 10, my kids would taste it and say, "Oh, it's not bad."
Yeah.
It just, to them, they didn't like how it looked or whatever. There was always something like that. But I think those are all great ideas for picky eaters, because that's always stressful for the parent, especially because I think parents feel like if my child doesn't eat dinner, that I'm not a good parent. Because they only want spaghetti, or they only want pancakes, or they only want whatever that thing is that your child really, really loves, and they want you to give it to them at every single solitary meal, and you feel bad about that as a parent. But you shouldn't feel bad. Just give them a taste of the one thing they really, really want, and give them, some of the rest of what the family's having. I remember friends talking about how they had to cook 2 different meals, and I was just like, oh, I'm definitely not doing that.
I'm over that.
I'm not going to make 2 separate meals for their picky eaters, because they just were so worried about them not eating.
And another point is really making sure that your child is hungry. Sometimes when they're hungrier, they will rebel less, and they will, there'll be less resistance, and they'll really want to try it. Sometimes when we feed our child with more drinks or apple juice and more fluids, that they're not quite as hungry for the meal. So if you can, really a hungry child will eat new foods much easier than one who's not.
That's a very good point,
So-
too. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about, you tell me your thought on what's the importance of eating meals together as a family, and also what's your thought about having regular meal times.
I think, and this is something I did a little bit of research on. I dug a little deep on this one, because I know intuitively that when you eat together, kids tend to eat healthier. But I read an article, and we'll also post some of those on the website, that not only if families sit down together at mealtime, but more importantly, turn off all, TV, computers, phones, and have really quality communication and connection time, it makes a really big difference as far as not only if the child's going to eat, but mental health, as well as even feeling empowered to make the right choices, communication skills.
Yeah.
So it all kind of, quote unquote, or feeds into each other. But having that quality time doesn't have to be 3 hours. We're talking about 45 minutes, where the child really picks up on a parent's values of that communication and that connection.
Yeah, I do think that family mealtime is the best opportunity to connect together as a family at the end of the day. And, we always do that same age-old question of what'd you do today at school? But having family mealtime opens that conversation up. It broadens that conversation. So it's not always just that one quick question about what'd you do at school today. Instead, it's, tell me how this class went. Tell me how your exam went. Or, as when your kids are younger, tell me what your favorite thing about the day was today. Trying to really generate a conversation. The other thing I would say that's good about mealtime is that you, as a parent and as a family, you're being a role model for your children, because you're sitting at the table together and you are eating, and they're seeing that you are eating. eating.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's another piece of it that I think is important. And it's also important if you guys are all eating the same thing. You know, one person, as long as one person isn't eating something different, then you're also role modeling trying new things, especially for the younger kids, because they're seeing you eat that and they might be more willing to try it because you are.
And just to piggyback on that, I was just reading that if a kid sees their friend eat broccoli or eat a food that they haven't been eating,
Yeah.
they'll tend to eat that more. So that's another role model.
That's
you know.
hilarious. So invite the friends over on the weekend. Give
Exactly.
them all broccoli. But that's funny. But that does make sense. Absolutely. Because, I mean, my kids always wanted to have whatever it was they had when they were over at their friend's house, you know, for a sleepover or a dinner or something. But I just do think it's a great time to connect as a family. And, you know, I think I was fortunate when my kids were younger. The cell phone thing really wasn't a thing back then. So I didn't have to say no
Yeah.
electronics. As they got older, I did. But everyone always complied with that. And I actually still do that now with my husband. We have dinner together at the dinner table, even though we're empty nesters and it's just us having dinner. I still do that because I feel like we don't need to be listening to the distraction of the news or the television. And it's a chance for us to actually look each other in the eye and talk about, hey, how was your day? What happened today? And continue that
Yeah.
and stay, you know, connected in that way. But one last thing about that, I think it's also good for families because you can get your children involved in dinner. They could be either helping you prep something, they can help clean something up, they can help package. Like if they really liked something, it can be a great opportunity to say, hey, you want to take that leftover for your lunch tomorrow? So that's another positive about it, I think.
Absolutely, and especially if there's a picky eater, you know, taking your child to the grocery store and even having them involved in your garden so that they really understand where fruit and vegetables come from and making it and the process from actually the farm to the table and seeing that process is very empowering.
I bet. I love that. I didn't even think about the garden. Nice. I love it. Okay, so we're going to dive into food allergies. Why do so many more kids seem to have them? And what, if anything, can parents do? Which we kind of touched on that a little bit already, but
Right. Well, I talked to a friend of mine who's an allergist, and he said that, you know, there's a lot of theories out there, and the clean theory or the sterile environment, Purell all the time, or let kids play in dirt. And I think that we're not with animals or farm animals. We tend to be in smaller areas that are germ free in our homes and whatnot. So I think that as a result, our immune system is not as strong as it could be. And I think that that's one of the sort of hypotheses that my friend shared with me as well. The second was what we talked about earlier. And I think that, you know, introducing peanuts and eggs and other sort of allergen foods at 6 months or when a baby can really enjoy the solids can make a difference. That is really a new recommendation is what we talked about. And then the other interesting area as far as allergies is that when a child has a vitamin D deficiency, there's been a connection between that and allergic reactions. So making sure that kids really are not vitamin D deficient. Often when a child is just being breastfed, they need to take a supplement of vitamin D as well as iron. So I'm sure there are many more hypotheses and there's somebody much more experienced than me to chat about it. But from a food perspective, I think it's just really the introduction of those foods at 6 months.
okay, that's very, very interesting. And also, if you think about it, when you go to the allergist, that's typically what they tell you. They want you to slowly, whatever that food was that caused a reaction, they want you to slowly reintroduce it so that your child can get used to or build up an immunity to it.
Right.
Is my understanding. I didn't actually have any kids with any severe food allergies, but it is interesting that they're changing those recommendations in order to kind of slow that down. And also, I hadn't really thought about the whole, we're so clean everywhere. You're constantly washing your hands, or you're constantly, using the Purells and all those antibacterial things. It's a very interesting point. I like it. How about vitamins and supplements? Do our children need vitamins and supplements? And do I need them?
Yeah, It's a loaded question.
Like everything.
I know. And there's lots of opinions on this. But based on the American Academy of Pediatrics and the dietary guidelines, if you and your child are eating a healthy diet, there's no reason to eat supplements or vitamins.
Okay.
However, not all of us eat a healthy diet.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some kids who have celiac disease, who have allergic reactions, intolerances that may need supplementation, and certainly parents can talk to the pediatrician about that. But keep in mind that many of the foods that kids eat, like fortified cereals or enriched cereals, fortified milk, fortified orange juice, already have vitamins in them.
Right.
So in some ways, kids are already getting supplements by the food in the food that they're eating. But parents want insurance. They just want a little extra insurance that their kid is eating, is getting all the nutrients. And I think as long as your child is growing appropriately, it's fine. Many pediatricians will say, listen, if you feel like your kid's not getting an appropriate diet, then a multivitamin is okay. But make sure that if you are taking a multivitamin, follow the RDA and that the recommendations are appropriate for your age child, and never give a child more than the RDA. Okay. So let's say the RDA for vitamin D is 400 international units. Find a supplement that has that amount, only 100% and nothing more.
Okay.
And the last thing I would say, if a parent really feels that their child is not getting an appropriate diet, make sure that the supplement is third-party tested so that whatever the ingredients are in the supplement actually are those ingredients. So, and that would really be for adults or children. But I have never gave my kids supplements. But on the other hand, there's not a wrong answer, especially if parents feel like they want to boost up their system.
It doesn't hurt anything if you want to give them one, is what you're really saying.
Exactly.
And it's funny, when you and I sat down and we started talking about this episode, and that question came up, I could not remember if I ever gave my kids a supplement. I don't think I ever did. But now that they're both adults, they do both take them. So that's interesting how that happens. And they definitely don't always eat well. That's just the way it is.
I know. And so we don't always eat well, and it's okay. There are some days that, oh my gosh, I didn't have a fruit today, or oh my God, I didn't have a vegetable. I mean, you can't look at it from day to day. You kind of look at your pattern of eating.
Right.
And I think that's just more of a healthy way of looking at it because, certainly there are recommendations eating 2.5 cups of fruits and vegetables a day, whole grains, lean protein, legumes, and whatnot. But sometimes we miss the mark, and it's okay.
Right. Absolutely. We can't always be perfect.
How
about some grocery shopping tips? Using grocery lists, shopping the outer perimeter. What can you recommend there?
I think when you shop the outer perimeter, you have more of the proteins, the milk, the foods, the fruits and vegetables, sort of the healthier foods. And if you go in the perimeter, you're not going to, get all the more of the processed foods. But I think, again, bringing your child with you to the grocery store
I like that.
makes a big difference. And a lot of parents are busy right now. And the research is showing that parents aren't shopping like they used to. They're getting a lot more deliveries. They're getting prepackaged meals that we're trying to find healthy, time-saving ways that you can still eat a good diet.
Yes, I know so many people that love Instacart. And so they don't go to the grocery store anymore. They just put everything they feel like they need in their house in the Instacart, and boom, it's delivered to their front door, which I did do quite a bit of that during COVID. I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And I've sort of fallen off of doing that. I mean, I'm back to going to the store and picking everything out myself. I don't know why, but I am. So I think the positive about using those services, not just Instacart, there's a lot of them, but you probably tend to buy only what you need. You probably save a little money in the sense that, how you go into the store, you get enticed to buying things because of where they place them. But also it prevents you from going into those areas where all the processed food is, and you're only seeing, the things that the healthy choices that you made from home.
No, it's true. I think Costco loses a lot of money when people get Costco delivery. You can't.
I bet.
You can't buy those, unnecessary items, right?
Yeah.
There are some other some great services though, like at different grocery stores like Aldi's or Fresh Market. They have the meal kits that are already ready to go. They are a little bit more expensive, but you get everything at one time for families if you're busy. Also, I have to give a plug for the Neighborhood Harvest. We are now creating family-sized meals.
Oh, that's great.
So that will deliver to your door. And what we'll do is put a QR code on the website so everybody can get, whoever's listening, a 30% discount if
Oh,
they
nice.
choose to
Love
to
it.
order. But we have fresh pizzas as well as lasagna and salads and vegetables on the side. So it kind of works with healthy eating as well.
Yeah, so I guess that is a huge time saver. There's all these meal whatever they're prepackaged, but they're the meal preps that you can order, like Home Chef. I can't think of them all right now. I'm sure you have
Like
them.
HelloFresh and
Hello
yeah,
Fresh,
yeah.
all of those out there. Those are probably big time savers for families. And generally, I would imagine healthier choices overall, maybe not entirely, but they would be time savers, not really money savers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think kids, I think they love to see mom or dad actually cooking in the kitchen and
do too.
chopping vegetables and being a part of it. It's such a fun experience. But there are alternatives if you don't have time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, even in those meal prep programs, though, you usually still have to do some chopping and whatever. So that's a good alternative, too. Okay. This is a good one because this, I think, is something that maybe people struggle with, and that is hydration. And how much water do my kids really need to drink? How much is too much? How much water do I, as an adult, need to drink? And what about adding those little flavorings to the water?
Right. If kids 1 to 3 need about 4 cups a day of water, of milk as well. And older kids, maybe 5 cups for 4 to 8 year olds and 7 to 8 cups for older children. And I guess the one area
Of water. We're talking water.
Of water, exactly. Well, for kids, for 1 to 3 year olds, it's actually 32 ounces of whole milk.
Okay.
And then you can add water, 4 to 6 ounces of water in addition. But I would still recommend 2 to 3 cups of milk for the older age group of kids also, or milk alternatives. But I would warn that if a parent is giving their child an alternative to milk, make sure it's fortified with calcium and vitamin D, because there are some kids that are lactose intolerant or are allergic to the protein. As far as flavorings, the one thing I always question is 100% apple juice or 100% fruit juice. It's still sort of sugar water. There are vitamins in there, but I'd rather your child eat the whole fruit and water with that, so they're getting the benefit of the fiber as well. Because if you're thinking about a cup of orange juice, a cup of orange juice really is 3 oranges.
Yeah.
So you're getting that concentrated sugar as well.
Yeah, true. Okay. But also, what about, I think this is more of an adult thing, but you know how you can buy those flavor additive? They come in these little packets.
Like Noom, and they're
Yeah.
like electrolytes. They're especially good like if you're working out and you need those electrolytes.
Yeah.
I just would be aware of any kind of artificial ingredients. I don't love stevia or Splenda in there, and make sure that they're not loaded with sugar. But I think the extra electrolytes are actually okay.
Okay. And that's a good point, making sure things are not overloaded with sugar, because if you really stop and start looking at all the labels, it is kind of shocking to see how much sugar is in pretty much everything that you can buy in the grocery store today. So it's important to really look at that and make sure you're not taking in too much. Okay, so dieting tips: less or no sugar added, more healthy fiber, lean protein, clean eating, smaller plate size, all these fun topics.
All these, and we can spend another hour on this.
I know, we really
You
could.
know, this is like a whole nother topic that we need another day. There are lots of different diets that fit for different people. And I think just sort of following the guidelines and making sure that you have a balanced diet, even though it's not completely accurate, but calories in equals calories out, lowering the amount of intake is going to help you lose weight.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who do, for example,
Oh,
Weight
gotcha.
Watchers or
Okay.
any kind of organized program, because it helps them actually fit in it's a very organized structure.
Yeah.
So whatever fits with your personality makes a big difference.
Okay.
I sort of follow a very broad strokes of the Mediterranean diet, and if you want to look at a plate and think about half of it being fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it being whole grains. And I mean whole grains where there's intact germ like brown rice or quinoa, or even grains like millet or amaranth, and then lean protein. Looking at it like that, and then lowering throughout the day. So I think that makes a big difference.
Okay, good. Love it. Okay, here's the fun part. So we're at our myth busters. Which is healthier and does it matter? How about whole milk dairy products versus non-fat versus low fat? And then obviously maybe even some that aren't really whole milk anymore. We have all these milk alternatives.
Right. Well, that has been a great debate going on now. And I think that working at the Neighborhood Harvest and working with chefs and tasting real whole milk or butter and things like that, that just adds so much more flavor to meals. I've changed my perspective a little bit.
Okay.
When you eat a whole milk yogurt, for example, you're going to have less sugar in it, you're going to have more flavor in it, and it's also going to provide more satiety. So you're going to not eat as much because you're more satisfied with the fat in there.
Okay.
On the other hand, I also have a history of heart disease, and whole fat yogurt and whole milk has a lot of saturated fat in it, and I need to cut back on mine. If you are drinking 1 glass of whole fat milk, it's about 4.5 grams of saturated fat, which I don't need. So I kind of do everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I like butter on my potato. Every once in a while, I like whole milk in my coffee. But if I'm eating a lot of it like yogurt, I tend to eat the Greek yogurt that is low fat, but it has higher amounts of protein in it. So really debate based on what your tastes are. But a lot of people are eating the whole fat yogurt because they feel it tastes better in smaller amounts. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Okay. I'm a huge fan of the Greek yogurt. That's my favorite. I love it so much. But what about like all the milk alternatives? Almond milk, oat milk. I don't know. There's probably twice as many more out there. I don't know what they all are, but
And we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but children, especially until after 1 to 2, should really be on whole milk. And I think if there is an issue, they can even go down to 2% if there's some issues with weight control, especially as a child gets a little bit older. But as far as alternatives to milk, there are plenty of them. Just again, making sure that the alternatives are not as healthy as the milk, and just make sure that they're fortified with that vitamin D and as well as calcium.
okay. Got it. How about butter versus margarine?
Well, I think you should throw all margarine away. That was it was something that just is chemically altered, and now it doesn't have as much trans fats because they're really sort of illegal. But margarine is really, I'd rather have butter than margarine.
Okay.
But in general, again, look at your pattern of eating. I tend to have more olive oil. If you look at spots around the world that are most healthy, you see the Mediterranean diet is always the number 1 diet. And it's fruits and vegetables, lean meats, beans, legumes, and olive oil. I mean, they're not drinking cups of olive oil,
Right.
but they're using olive oil as their fat. And then, small amounts of butter. And I think that everything is in moderation. I use mostly olive oil as my fat.
Okay.
But if you want to use, again, olive oil does not taste good in chocolate chip cookie.
No.
You're going to want to use butter. So I think that, again, looking at your pattern of eating as opposed to the occasional pat of butter or, high fat alternative.
Okay. I like it. Moderation.
That's the name.
Yeah. So what about peanut butter versus almond butter versus soy nut butter?
Both almond butter, soy butter, and peanut butter all have about the same, nutrition in them.
Okay.
But I think almond butter might be a little bit healthier. It has a few more minerals and vitamins and fiber. They're about equal in calories. And peanut butter might be a little bit higher in protein. But the key here is to eat pure peanut butter, pure almond butter, as opposed to any butters with extra sugar in it or additives and extra salt. So when you look at the ingredients, it just should say peanuts or almonds, and that's really the butters you can eat.
So it's back to read the label, pay attention to what it says and what else it has in it, because it's the additives that tend to cause us a lot of problems.
It's true, and people who tend to eat more butters, and it can either be a butter or real nuts, have the lowest rates of diabetes and heart disease if that's their source of fat. So it's actually healthier as a snack to eat. Again, in moderation. I mean,
Right.
it's still a high sort of caloric food, but it's great also for kids and snacks.
Yes, peanut butter on an apple. Peanut butter and celery. There's so much you can do with peanut butter that kids in general tend to love. So, all right, well, read that label.
And you can keep it close by. If you're in the car and you bring with you a couple snacks, you have the peanut butter or almond butter with you. It's something that you can do very quickly and have the kids really enjoy a quick snack. If before dinner or
Yeah, and
meal.
I think I even saw like now they're selling them in like little snack size containers. So that would make life even easier if you didn't have to repackage it yourself. But again, you'd still need to read that label.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely.
Animal protein versus plant-based protein. There is so much out there now that's like plant-based meat, sausage, hamburgers. I don't know. I mean, you call them hamburgers, but they're really not. There's just a lot of that now. So what do you think about that?
Well, the Impossible Burger, the Beyond Burger is just not as healthy as you think it is.
Okay.
There's a lot of additives in the meat. I know some people who are vegans and vegetarians, and they sometimes want a good burger,
Yeah.
or a vegetarian burger. But there are other better choices, like the Boca Burger, and there's some better choices in the grocery store that don't have as many additives to it and more are bean based. And I think that the Impossible Burger is really not bad for, again, in moderation. But if you think it's really a healthy alternative, I'd rather have a cup of lentils or edamame beans, something like that.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. That makes total sense. When I was when I was really young, and I guess it was after my first child was born, I went completely vegan. I had been a vegetarian previously in my life, off and on, but for some reason, I just could not be around any animal protein after he was born. I have no idea why. That went on for a while. But I remember, first of all, there was nothing in the store that you could just go and buy that resembled a burger. But I remember buying a box of something that was powder and making these burgers with it. And my husband was a champ. He ate it with me. I'm sure he hated every second of it. But and he was glad when that phase ended, for sure.
that's funny because when I was pregnant, I think with my second child with Ben, I wanted a burger. I was also a vegetarian. I wasn't a vegan, but I never really ate a lot of red meat, but I craved hamburgers and my iron was low. And sometimes you have to listen to your body as far as what the foods are that you need. So it was sort of the opposite. And then after the pregnancy, then I kind of reverted back to my old ways. But I remember during that pregnancy, I saw a burger. I'm like, gosh, I really want that.
I want to eat that really bad. But that's a good point. Listen to your body,
Yeah.
It pretty much can guide us. Okay, so what about organic food versus non-organic, produce, eggs, meat, chicken, all of it?
One site that's really helpful, and we'll put on the website as well, is called the Environmental Working Group, and they put out a list of what they call the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So it gives you an idea of what the foods are. I'm the kind of person where I don't eat all organic or non-organic. I kind of have my grocery list of what to eat. And I think that I tend to eat more organic meats. On our website for the Neighborhood Harvest, we actually sell organic meats. We know where our fruits and vegetables are coming from different farms in Virginia. So it's very easy to trace some of those foods.
Okay.
It's very expensive to have organic food, to be a farmer and to provide organic food. As long as you know that the farm is sustainable and they don't use pesticides or chemicals, I'm okay with those fruits and vegetables, especially at farmers markets, where you know that they're healthy, but they're not necessarily organic.
Okay.
But when you do look at the Dirty Dozen from the Environmental Working Group, strawberries is the number one food. So I tend to buy more organic strawberries. Things like spinach and kale. I like getting spinach and kale hydroponically so that it's not, laced with pesticides.
Okay.
And when you think of clean eating, avocados and bananas, for example, have very few pesticides in them. There's no reason to buy organic avocados or organic bananas. Usually with the skin, you don't need to buy that. So this is a great reference for everyone to look through and see that some foods buy organic, like berries, other foods with skins, or even like sweet peas or asparagus that usually don't have a lot of pesticides, then you don't really need to worry about that.
All right, well, that's a good point. Because I know that's always a big debate with people. And, some people say, oh, buying organic, that's not worth it. It's just another way for them to charge us more money for something. So I think it's good to know that there are some things that you're probably better off buying organic, like a strawberry, and other things that potentially you don't really need to.
Absolutely.
They have their own protection built in, like a banana. All right, one more thing thing on our Mythbusters list. How about olive oil versus canola oil versus all the other thousands of oils?
Well, I think, again, I'm a big fan of olive oil, but the first, make sure that if you are getting soybean oil or corn oil, that it's non-GMO. And I think that's one of the issues. There's a lot of GMOs in the soybean oil, especially in America. Okay. So if you're going to buy the soybean oil or corn oil, and that's great to cook with, make sure it's the first expressed, which is like when you talk about virgin olive oil, it's the first expression of that oil, so it's a little bit healthier. As far as olive oil, not necessarily to get organic, but it's really wonderful as far as salad dressing and the taste. And research article after research article has shown that olive oil has really been wonderful as far as heart disease and diabetes.
So that being said, though, it's another thing that you have to say in moderation, because there's a lot of calories in all the oils, really. And so it's worth looking at, what is a tablespoon of olive oil? How many calories is that? How much fat is that? And to be conscious and be aware of that. Because so many times I see, people just dumping the olive oil in things when they're cooking. It's better to pay attention to exactly how much you're putting in, because you're eating half your caloric intake in that oil if you're not paying attention.
Absolutely. Sometimes I watch Lydia, the Italian, she makes all these great Italian meals, and she probably puts a half a cup of olive oil in when she's starting to stir fry onions and all the vegetables. I'm thinking that's way too much olive oil. You just don't want to. But you have to be very mindful of how much you're using. And sometimes when you are using it for salad dressing or for cooking, spraying it on, again, measuring a tablespoon is very helpful in looking at the actual serving size.
I think that's great. Sandra, this has been wonderful. And I think our listeners are going to love this, because there's so many things out there that you're never sure if you're doing the right thing. I guess in sort of wrapping us up and thinking about what are some of our key points, meal prep is a key point. Try to spend some time thinking and planning, whether it's on the weekend. It will just help your week go more smoothly. It will help you all be able to have family dinner time without so much work and effort each evening. And get your kids involved, both from grocery shopping to helping prepare the dinner or cleaning up or packaging it. It could be their school lunch for the next several days, especially if they've tried something new and they like it. Picky eaters, basically, I think the biggest thing to say about that is to keep offering them things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If they choose not to eat it, they choose not to eat it. But that doesn't mean don't stop, offering and giving them the chance to try something. I think you said, 15 times before?
Anywhere between 10 and 15 times.
Yeah, before they're actually going to try something and then maybe like it. So meal services, but that's another option for busy families if they still want to cook at home together, eat healthy, but save some time. They don't have to go to the grocery store. It comes prepackaged, and they can still cook it at home and have a good, healthy family dinner. Grocery shopping tips: always make a list, stay on the outer perimeter, and nowadays people don't even have to go to the grocery store. You can just make your list at home, which I think probably saves money. Hydration: I think you went over how much hydration children need. I don't want to try to quote that and say the wrong amount, but we're going to have some of these resources up on our website for our listeners to go back and take a look at it. Paying attention to the sugars, look at the labels. I think that's really, really important. And I think the overall biggest message is moderation,
Absolutely. You said it perfectly. That's all I can say. You were really listening.
Yes. Well, I think this is an important topic. It's definitely important to me. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Please give us feedback on our podcast. And if you found value in today's episode, we hope that you will subscribe, share, and follow us. We release a new episode every other week, so please pay attention, and there'll be a new one coming out shortly. Please also visit our website at strelitzinternationalacademy.org for more information about this episode, and we will have a bunch of links to resources that Sandra was referring to in today's episode for you to refer back to. Again, I thank everyone for joining us, and remember, it takes a whole community to build a strong foundation for our children to grow and develop. On behalf of SIA, I thank you for joining us today, and I thank you for your partnership.